been brought up a couple times that I'd like to clarify. One of which is clearance, the definition of what clearance is, and the term backing. What do those terms mean for an independent filmmaker, producer, musician? Might be a legal question, but what is a clearance? What is a song clearance?
Yeah, you go. You're the attorney.
I kind of feel like I should be in the audience for this, but I'll try my best. Clearance usually involves, and Simon, you're sitting next to me, correct me if I use the wrong terms. If you're going to have music placed in film or television or advertising or something like that, you're going to have 2 licenses. A master use license and a synchronization license. It's my understanding that the master license is for the use of the composition, and then the synchronization license is the right to take that song and match it with a visual image. So any kind of clearance is going to involve those 2 licenses. So for, if you're in a band or you just casually make music and want to learn how to turn that into money, paperwork is going to be everything. There's a copyright in the written version of that song, and then there's a copyright in the recorded version of that song. And you have to have all of the right clearances from everybody who touched that song. Every single songwriter has to be identified. Every single artist or producer on that recording has to be identified. So getting into any kind of licensing is all going to come down to that paperwork. So keep good records, keep your split sheets, get signatures from people on, what percentage of the song each person owns. And you don't have to have a federal copyright registration in order to have copyrights in a written song or recording, but it helps, if you ever get into litigation with someone. But just by creating something, you inherently have a copyright in it. But in order to be able to prove it, it should be in writing somewhere. So just keep that in mind as you're creating. I know that's the first barrier to entry for what Simon does. Is the first thing he's going to ask you is show me the paperwork. So that's kind of where the clearance process starts.
Clearing music means that you have the right to use that piece of intellectual property in another piece of intellectual property. So it means in the case of music that you have the right to use that song, like Beth said, whether it's the composition, the words of music itself, or the words of music plus a specific master recording, and you're going to use that in your film in this, for the purposes of this audience. So how do we go about clearing that? We take a couple of steps, and while I don't want to open too much of a Pandora's box here, since the question is how do we clear something, the first question that I'm going to ask somebody is, well, do you have a fair use right to use it? So for a documentary maker, filmmaker, then he may have a right under copyright law to use that song because he has talked to Beth, his attorney, and she has said, okay, I've looked at the copyright law, I've looked at the principles of fair use, and what you're doing in that film, I can back you up if we have to go to court, so you're good to go. He doesn't have to contact anybody, it's fair use, but that song is cleared. They went through a process of vetting, how can I use one piece of musical intellectual property in this audiovisual intellectual property. And then there are some other subsequent questions that one can ask, well, basically it's ephemeral use, is it live to air, et cetera, before we get to, okay, I don't have any other free leg to stand on under U.S. copyright law, so okay, now I have to go to those rights owners. And that part is really what we have come to think of as clearing music, but in a very technical sense, you're saying, well, how do I have the right to use this music legally, and on what argument am I going to hang my hat